Hi everyone, thanks for joining me. My name is Dag Corbett. I'm a solutions engineer here at LogicMonitor, and I'm going to be running this dashboarding webinar. And essentially the reason I want to run it is that I do see a lot of, a few features when I'm on calls with people that go underused. And I really want to make sure that you guys know they're there, know how to use them, and are getting the most out of them. Just so you know, we are recording this so we can send out a copy of that recording for anyone who wants it later. And yeah, let's take a look at what we're going to be doing in today's session. So just to take a look at the agenda here, we're going to take a look at some overall dashboarding strategy, get an idea of what you should be looking at as you're building your dashboards, how to get the most out of the LogicMonitor metrics, because they do provide a lot, and we want to make sure you're getting the actionable metrics out of them. We're going to take a look at some example dashboards and see what people have been up to, what we've been up to, how we think, different strategies we think that work well when building out these dashboards. You can sort of get the creative juices flowing there. And then finally, we're going to take a look at some tips and tricks of building out these dashboards and actually see those things that I mentioned that go underused and see them in action. Just to let you know, we've got Nicholas Abbott on the line here, who's one of our customer success managers. He's going to be answering questions throughout, so do use the questions section of the GoToWebinar portal there. Okay, so with that done, let's get going. So in terms of strategy, in my mind, it comes down when you're trying to build out these dashboards in the first place to sort of these three core questions. So what is the most important to your business? What are your applications that need to be up and running? Is it your website that customers need to be able to access? Is it your backend databases and infrastructure? What is it that basically means these are the most important things to running the business? Then once you've identified those, you want to be taking a look at really what shows that these things are working. Is it just that the website's up and running and that the elements can load? Is it that the application can be connected to from an external point of view? Or is it more in depth than that? Is it that the server load needs to be below a certain amount in order to keep it efficiently running? So what are the key metrics that really mean that these devices or these aspects of your business are working properly? And we'll take a look at how you can identify these within LogicMonitor as well. And finally, once you've seen those, really, what is the best way to show it? Is it, we've got a few example widgets on the right there. You've seen them all, I'm sure, in product or in a demo. And is it just what's being displayed? We're going to bring in those metrics and just display them, or do you want to manipulate them in some way? Do you want to display them on a graph, or is it the uptime, that sort of thing? So we'll take a look at that as well. And then within LogicMonitor itself, you also have a few different tools to help you identify what's important. So you'll know to some extent what your critical applications are. You'll know what is important there. So on your end, sort of your internal resources, maybe your colleagues as well have some insight that you might need to question about. But then within LogicMonitor, there are a few things you can use to help you in that respect as well. So the default alert thresholds we've set within LogicMonitor as sort of these are industry best practices. What they are, customer feedback, their own research, and really these things that have alert thresholds already set are metrics you want to keep an eye on. And it might well be that these are the sorts of things that you want to bring into a dashboard as well. You've got your device level graphs as well. So if you look on the devices tab, you've got your devices there, you've got your graphs on the devices tab itself. And these are things that we think, again, are useful graphs to have. The issue there, of course, is that these graphs only apply to one device. So we're going to take a look at how to replicate these on a dashboard and apply them to groups of devices or your entire environment. And then finally, you've got your documentation through the portal. You've got your chat support and the community forums as well. And if you've not been on the forums, I do recommend getting on there. The more people that are on there, the better, really. Just the more sort of community aspect we can generate, the better it'll be for everyone involved. Okay, so with that section sort of done, we're going to take a look at a few example dashboards here. We're going to see what we can generate and a few different sort of strategies to when you want to build out these dashboards, different ideas. This is actually a custom dashboard. This is one I've obscured any sort of any information to identify who they are, of course. But really, it exemplifies what I was saying earlier about drilling down to the core components of your business and what's important about those, what metrics you want to see. So this is a very specific, overview, general overview of the environment in total. So it's looking at the core metrics that say business is running up and okay. We've got email system load. We don't want that to be locking out. We've got the processing load. We can see that did get close to 100% capacity, and we can see when. So we can do some investigation as to what was going on there. So these 6 core metrics here, but then we've also got generally under each of the different groups running functionally. Is the website available? What's the response time for that? Are people accessing quickly enough? And so on. So a general overview to show, over the entire business, this is how it's working. So that's sort of general overview approach. We then have one in our own demo environment that I think is really good as well. And this is a view of one specific application, in this case our website, and it's looking at it from every possible point of view. So it's what we sometimes refer to as 360-degree monitoring. And what you'll see here is we've got a live feed of the website and the availability over the last 30 days. We've got a health reading of each of the pages associated. So that's sort of external point of view stuff there, and global response times from our various locations around the globe there. And then we also have this internal point of view. We're looking at each of the devices that is involved in keeping the website up and running on our end internally. So we can see the storage volume actually is getting quite full there. We might want to take a look at that, or there's some issue with it separately. So we can drill down into that and see what the issue is. But also, it's important. You might be thinking, right, okay, I'm looking at my internal architecture and further down as well, and can see that's all fine. But then that might not be any use to the customers who are having slow loading times. So it's important to have this sort of 360-degree view, see everything that is related to the running of this application. As we go further down, you can see we've got a few more in-depth metrics as well. So this is sort of the health, is it up and running? And then these are sort of how well is it as well. So you can see we've got the connections to the website and the IIS server uptime there. We're actually bringing in some metrics from our APM there as well. So we can bring in external metrics there. Just embedded that widget straight from the other place. And then furthermore, in-depth metrics of the devices that are running them, the CPU usage, and so on. Okay, so hopefully that's given you a few ideas about the sorts of things you can get out of dashboards, the sorts of approaches that we think are good to take. Now I'm going to take a different tack here and take a look at actually building out these dashboards and some of the things, as I mentioned earlier, that go underused. So actually I'm going to create a new dashboard here. So I'm going to go add dashboard. I'm going to call it webinar because I'm very creative. And I'm going to create it privately. Then I'm going to create this dashboard, but I want to apply it to various groups separately. And I don't want to have to build it out each time. So I'm actually going to use these widget tokens. And this is something I have a few questions about usually that people might not know about that much. So I'm just going to enable that widget token checkbox there. And you see it comes up with 2 by default. I'm going to leave them as star, but what this is saying is wherever we see this default device group token, we're going to insert this star value there. So that's just going to be star for everything. It's using the glob terminology, which I'll touch on later. We can see a bit more about how that works. So I'm going to save that. It'll create the dashboard. I'm going to close down this menu here just so I have the full view. And then I'm going to start creating widgets. So let's add a widget here. I'm going to do a knock widget. And it's just going to say group health. So I'll look at the entire group and the health of the devices in it. So I'm going to sort by alert severity, so any issues do arise first. And then I'm going to click this plus icon here to add in some devices. And you can see it's already filled in the default device group token there, which I'm going to leave. That's exactly what I want. Then I'm just going to bring in all my devices. Okay. I'm going to sort by device, so I see each one separately, and it's going to say the host name. So let's save that. Just going to make it easier to read, more columns, and make it stand out color. Save and close and resize that. So we've got that widget showing the health of all of our devices there. Going to add one more in, and then we're going to see about how those tokens can work. So let's add a widget and make it a custom graph widget. This one's going to be the busiest ports by input. Okay, my access label will be megabits per second. And then in the data point, I'm going to, again, default device group. Device will be all. And I might not necessarily know where the device data source is coming from. So this is another tip that I find, because if I want to get to the devices tab to investigate this, I'd have to close this and open it and then redo all of this. So whenever you're building our dashboards, I'd always say keep at least one more tab open. You can then go into it, say, right, okay, I'm looking at my ports. I can take a look at the top, see what the data points are, and see, indeed, there's an in Mbps right there. And that's on the interfaces. So I'm going to type interfaces here. And I'm actually going to use the 64-bit. Going to bring in all the instances. And that data point, as we saw, was in Mbps. Let's save that. And then I'm going to draw that line as well, so in Mbps. Now I know that it's coming from the ports, and it's in the title, it's busiest ports. So actually, to make things a bit more readable when it's there, I'm going to delete this bit in the legend that says data source name. So it's just telling me which host and which instance. Let's save and close that. Okay, brilliant. So I've now built out a dashboard I really like, and let's say it's got 10 widgets or more, and I don't want to have to build that out again. I want to keep this one, but I want to actually apply it to another group. Well, that's exactly what the tokens are there for. So I'm going to open up the menu, find that dashboard, open up the config of it, and clone it. I'm going to rename it. So this one's going to be just for the networking group. So let's be creative again, and webinar network. And this time, what I'm going to do is, instead of going into each of these widgets in turn and changing that group to apply to a new one, I'm going to open up this token. Default device group will now apply to the network group. Okay, now you can see I can just select that network group there, but actually I have multiple offices, or I'm an MSP, and each of my customers or offices have a networking group. And I want to bring all of them into one place. And I don't want to have to build out a dashboard for each one of them. So I'm actually going to type in network here. I'm going to use that glob terminology again. So I'm going to put a star before and after it. And what that's going to do is going to pick up any group that has the word network in its name. So you can use the glob terminology there as well. And you can see it's already scaled down and picked out just the devices in those networking groups. And same for the ports, it's brought them in. Okay, so that's tokens. There's one more thing you can do with them, actually, that I'll mention now as well. Let's say I have many ESX hosts, and I want to create a dashboard that shows me all of the guests on that host. I want to do it for each of my hosts. I don't want to have to create them each time. Now, I could use the, if I open up the config of this again, I could use the default device group, put each of my hosts into a different group. That would be tedious though. So what I'm going to do instead is you can actually create your own tokens. I'm going to click the plus icon. I'm going to stick with convention and just call it default device. And then again, another reason to have another tab open. I'm going to hop over to my devices, open up my virtualization group, and I can just copy the name of this device out, go back and put it in as the value for that token. So then you can create your own tokens, essentially. I'm saying if I close that, save that there, close this down again. And if I open up the configuration for any graph, I could as well. You see, if I click on device here, I still have the option for insert token. I could insert that default device token there. Okay, there is one caveat with tokens I'd like to mention. One limitation at the moment, the alerts list widget doesn't actually support it yet. So if you're doing dashboards that you're cloning and tokening, and you've got alerts lists in there, do be aware that you'll need to go in and just edit those ones yourself. Everything else will apply with the token there. Okay. So yeah, tokening. Right. Next point then, I mentioned earlier about these dashboard graphs. Let's take a look at those, see what I mean. So I'm on a device here. I'm going to go back to my networking group and open up this NX switch. And if I open up this data source here, one of the interface's data sources, we can see we've got this overview graph that shows the 10 busiest interfaces by total bandwidth. Let's say I really want that. That's a really good graph. Okay, let's take a look. There doesn't seem to be a total bandwidth data point at the top here. That's annoying because if I were to apply this, as I mentioned earlier, if I were to apply this straight to a dashboard, it would apply just for this device, and I can't configure it. I can't edit it. So to get around that, what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at graph definition. I'd click on there. It'd open up a new tab and bring me exactly to here, just in this for loading time. And then I can see here that it's telling me how this, scroll at the bottom, it's telling me how this graph is built out. So the data points it's bringing in are in octets and out octets. It's then creating a virtual data point, which we can do on a dashboard as well, which is what we're going to be taking a look at as well. And this is going to be performing any calculation on these data points. So you can see we're adding them together and then multiplying the total by 8. And then it's going to be drawing that new line there. So let's actually do that. Let's say on our dashboard, create a new widget, custom graph widget, and it's going to be busiest ports by total bandwidth. The Y value, I'm going to actually end up with Mbps again. And we saw earlier that so we're going to do all devices. The device data source again will be the interfaces. And we saw that it was in octets. Sorry, all instances. Jumped ahead of myself there. In octets, there it is. Top 10, save that. I'm then going to clone it with the clone icon there. And that will just make things a bit quicker for me. So I'll rename it to be out octets. And on the data point, I'll bring out octets as well. There we go. Save that. Then I need to create my virtual data point. So I'm going to click the plus icon again, select virtual data point at the top, name it for total. And the expression then, I'm going to use this insert data point icon here to put both of them in, add them together. And then if I'm going to use 2 sets of brackets because I'm going to, outside the first, multiply by 8. And outside the second, this is in bits per second, as we saw earlier. So I want to divide by 1024 to get to kilobits, and then once again to get to megabits. So let's save that. Then all I need to do is tell it to draw that final line, that total line there. Save and close. And there we are. So we can see the total throughput on the busiest ports there. Now, there's a few other things you can do with these virtual data points. I'll show you one here, and then I'll show you some more in the documentation at the end. But one thing I think goes quite underused a lot as well is the fact that you do need at least one regular data point in a graph widget before you can create virtual data points, but you don't actually need to use any. So if I just put my limit as the title, and the expression, I can just put a flat value. So we can see they go up to about 75, so let's put that in. So I can just draw a flat line, draw that, my limit, save and close. And that's drawing that line. I can see when things go over it. One of the best use cases I see for this is we do have a data source called the device count data source, and that can show you the number of devices in a group, as an example. So maybe you've got multiple offices spread out around the world, or an MSP with multiple customers, and you want to make sure that each office or each customer isn't going over your preset device limit for that location, or indeed that they're using a sufficient amount of them, that they're not underusing their allocated resource as well. You can put this on, put the line for their limit, and then just easily see how close they are to that line in a visual representation. Okay, so that's on virtual data points and creating these graphs. The last thing I really want to show in Platform that I see underused really is the forecasting data. If you've been on demos or been seeing some of the, keeping up to date with the release notes and things, you'll have seen this come about. But I'm going to just show you it in action here. One of the best sort of use cases I see for it is actually in AWS Billing. So to make the most of this, you need a metric that's going to increase gradually. And this is a really good example of it. So if I go to this widget that says total cost by service type, drop this down, and I can see forecast right there. Now you can see it's a bit skewed by this sudden drop where it resets each month. So let's change that. We'll go to March and set it to 3rd to give it some time there. And you can see it's going to forecast out for the next few days. Now it doesn't know it's going to drop off at the start of the month. But what I can see here is, right, we're going to get billed, say, end of the month. And I can hover over here, March 31st, end of the day, and see it's about 3,650. Now imagine if you're near the beginning of the month, say the 8th of March, you could forecast that out and see what your total AWS cost for this month will be at your current usage. And say, if it's going to be too high, you can try to say, right, this is going to be a problem. Let's adjust our AWS usage, maybe consolidate some of our resources and bring it down before the end of the month. Let it collect for a few days, forecast over those few days, and then you can see it again and see what's going to be at the end of the month there. Okay, that is everything I wanted to cover in Platform. Last few things I want to cover then are in the documentation, which I'm just going to use the question mark there to jump to. And really, they're things I've been mentioning throughout. So I mentioned that glob terminology. So let's take a look at that. And so far, I've just been using it really to look at star. So bring in everything, but you can actually do a lot more than just that. So you can see here the syntax we can use within the platform. And this allows you to, say, for instance, make a negative pattern search. So you could bring in your group of SQL devices, for example, but there are a few that are managed by someone else or belong to someone else or something. And you could just bring in all your SQL devices and exclude those few, as an example. Or you can match any device that has SQL in the name or ESX in the name or whatever it may be, but bring them all in together. So you can put in multiple different search patterns there and bring them into one glob query, as it were. So do take a look at those. There's a few things you can do, and really this will enable you to bring in exactly what you want to see in a graph. I'd really recommend taking a look at that. The other one then is when we were looking at virtual data points, what you can do there, because you can do a lot more than just basic calculations and flat lines. So let's go to data point expressions and search that. And what you'll see is a lot of different functions you can perform here. So you can see, you can do that addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, and so on. But you can do a lot more as well. So you can do comparison functions. You can see, is this going to be less than a certain value or less than another data point? You can do greater than or less than, so display whichever of these two data points is the greatest or the lowest. One I've heard asked for a lot actually is this percentile function here. So usually in the format of 95th percentile monitoring. So you can actually build that out within LogicMonitor with this simple function here, percent, and then it's the data point you're bringing in, and then the value, so 95 for 95th percentile monitoring. So again, do take a look at these documents and see really what's available there and what you can bring into a graph. And as I mentioned before, there's a link from the support page, the initial support page at the bottom to go to those community forums. And I would recommend getting involved in there. So there's that link there. Okay, at that point, I'm going to pass over to Nick. If we have a few sort of questions that he thinks are relevant to everyone, we can bring those up. And I think he has a few things to say otherwise as well.
Yep, hi all. Couple of questions from the session. First one that came in was asking if there's documentation available where we can review industry standard best practices on metrics and thresholds and the rationale behind them. Now we've got a number of areas of documentation in our knowledge base, but things like that, industry standard stuff is best. You can find most of this stuff out there on the World Wide Web, and Google will give you a good idea about those. But in terms of thresholds and industry best practice, LogicMonitor will set automatically thresholds based on industry best practice, customer feedback, etc., on a number of different data sources across the product. So that gives you a good starting point, but then they can be tuned as necessary. And really, the second question we had was will this video be available for people that couldn't make the session today? Yes, we are recording it, and we'll forward that on to everyone who's attended. And that's pretty much it in terms of the questions. Actually, one's come in. One moment, a second. Are glob expressions the same as regex, and does it follow a regex standard? Can I hand over to Dag on that one?
No, so it's not the same as regex. Basically, what I'd refer to when building out the global expressions is just that documentation page I just showed. We do use regex separately within the platform, but global expressions do differ in a few key ways there. So do take a look at that to make sure you're not trying to use regex expressions in the global expressions section there.
Thanks, Tag. And another question's coming. Can we get some access to more of these dashboards? It'll be interesting to see what sort of things we want to take as examples. 1 second. So these are text messages coming, questions coming in. I think there is a drive in relation to these dashboards at some point is to build out some kind of template dashboards for customers further down the line. I can't talk too much about that right now. But yeah, I mean, if there's something we can help out with, we'd be more than happy to do so. So if there are some, if you need help at setting up dashboards or you want some examples set up for you, then reach out to your customer success manager, and we'll help you out with that.
What I'd say as well, and I do keep mentioning it, but it's something that's going to be we're trying to get going really well, is if you've got a dashboard you're particularly proud of, or you're wanting examples like this, please do feel free to be posting them on those forums. You could put a link to your own dashboard and show others what you've been doing, show others what you've been achieving, and really get some feedback on how to get them. As well as you guys on those forums, we are quite active on them as well. So there will be some responses on there. So if you do want to take a look at some examples or things like that, do get involved with those forums as well as your success manager, as Nick mentioned there.
Thanks, Doug. A couple more questions that have coming. Is there a way to show warnings in the history of graphs on vertical lines?
If that's as in where they've passed thresholds, triggered alerts. I wouldn't say so. We do have an alerts count widget, actually. Data source. So what you could do is have a separate graph next to it showing the alerts that have triggered. And actually, if I hop back over to something with multiple graphs, maybe, what you'll see is if you have these two graphs next to each other, so one showing the data you're looking at and one showing the alerts that are triggered for that group even, you can see it. So if we've got the two graphs in the top left and bottom right of the screen there, you can see that line, that vertical line will appear on both so that you can compare the time across them. That's probably the easiest way to do that at the moment.
Okay, thanks. I've got another one here, Doug. Can you export dashboards in the way that other LM users could import? No, there's no way to export dashboards, is there, right now? You can share them using RBAC or Coffee Cup reports, so dashboard sharing here, which comes as a kind of a clickable URL, but there's no way to export them. Okay, another question coming in. Is there ability to set LogicMonitor site in a dark theme, or sort of skin it? I think that's been mentioned, but there's nothing right now to do that.
I would personally love that myself. I do a lot with dark themes. What I'd say is if you do want that, when you're in LogicMonitor, use this feedback button at the bottom right here and drop that in. Customer feedback is always more listened to than if I put something in, and the more people that say about it, the more likely it is to actually get done as well.
Okay, thanks, Tack. Let's see which ones we can cover off next. Is there a way to show total types of AWS instances, e.g., 2 medium, 2 micro, etc.?
Let's see. Probably so we'll go by resource type by EC2 RDS, not by default in that sense. Probably the easiest way to do that is to tag your devices. That would mean you're bringing in your different, your micro and etc. in different AWS groups, because you'd bring them in per tag. But what you could do then is just have one that's, if you go to your AWS manage and add the tag you're after in the tag options there, you would filter those devices in. So if you had one group for each sort of tag, you could then say, right, let's then count the number of devices in this tagged group.
Thanks, Dag. A couple more, just because I know we're almost at at 10 o'clock. How do you show the alert count per device in a table widget?
Alert count per device. Well, I think that, yeah, that would just be through we do have an alerts count data source. Now that isn't in core yet, so unless you've specifically asked for it to be added in, you won't have seen it. What I'd say is get in touch with your customer support manager or similar, and we can import that data source into your account, and then from there it will just be feeding those as regular metrics. You can bring those into a table widget there.
Great stuff. Okay, and a couple of they're rolling in. So one of the questions was, can LogicMonitor create network maps? That's something we get asked for a lot. Not right now, but it is on our roadmap for the very near future. When we get more information on that, I'll pass that on. And do you plan more data sources for Azure and AWS? Well, we're always building out the AWS data sources, and in terms of, and we do have a way to show AWS billing, and if you weren't aware, the Azure integration is currently in beta, and that's being built out as the beta goes on. So we'll be launching that in Q2, I think. No firm timelines around that, and that will be built out much the way AWS is. We also iterative approach to that kind of stuff.
Yeah, just to hop on there as well, with the Azure monitoring metrics there, basically we're using the Insights API, and as far as I'm aware, we're up to date with that. As more things become available through the Insights API, we will be adding those in. We're in a very good place to just quickly, as soon as the documentation on how to get those metrics is available, we build that out basically. Okay,
great stuff. Thanks, Dag. And last one. Can you combine different metrics in one graph, such as showing IAPS versus CPU usage on a SAN device?
Yeah, absolutely. So what you can do on any graph, I'll just hop into the configuration for this one quickly. So we've got the ping coming in on this one. You can just add another data point, whatever you want it to be, and draw it. Now, obviously with that you be careful, because if one's operating on a completely different scale to the other, you only want to be visible. But this will be, you could even do things like bring in two different data points and use those greater than or less than functions within the data point expressions documents to compare them and see which is higher, automatically drawing that for you.
Cool, thank you. There's been a question about Azure, but I think what we can do is we can cover that on a different webinar. We do have on the April 19th a feature update, the first quarter feature update, where we'll go through all the releases we've done since January, and take you through that on a webinar, and there'll be some good time to cover some questions on that, because we have run out of time sadly today. But thanks all for coming. I'm sure Dag will say the same, and we'll post all these questions back and send you the invites to the next webinars very shortly.
Thank you very much. Yeah, as I said, we'll get some more webinars, and as we do, we'll let you know. And otherwise, thanks for joining me.